let me do just a brief introduction to start, and you can say more, James. But I'm here. My name is Wes. I'm founder and co-director of Kinship Plot, and I'm here with James Krohn. James is a theological educator, a former pastor. You are the founder and director of Crux. Would love to hear a little bit about that. So why don't you just say, James, a little bit about who you are, what your vocation is, what you're doing there in South Africa.
No, thanks, Wes. So I'm married to Corley, and I heard how you very carefully stated that you're a co-director. Mm-hmm. I think I'm most definitely also a co-director. So Corley and I really are a team, and we've got 5 children. And it's a pity Corley can't be here because it's evening time and she's putting kids to bed and that kind of thing. But yeah, so together we run what this little institution that we've named Crux, which is a slightly odd name. But it's really a Christian formation community in the beautiful university town of Stellenbosch. So for those of you who've got access to the internet, you can Google Stellenbosch and have a look at how beautiful it is and what a special town it is. It really is a unique place, and that's what we do. We came here in 2015 after a stint as in pastoral leadership in Canada on a church in an island and closely associated with Canadian Labrie. And out of that and a bunch of other things and years in theological education, this kind of vision grew, and it happened to be planted in Stellenbosch, yeah. So.
And there's lots of resonance, I think, between what you are doing, the vision God has given you for Crux, and what we are embodying by God's grace with Kinship Plot. So, and this whole idea of kinship, which we talk about as mutual relationships of every kind. It's about mutuality of being, because that's who God is, and this is who we're created to be. How does that idea of mutual relationships factor into the work of Crux and the work that you do?
Yeah, I think I think you guys are very intentional about it. We were intentional, I think, probably a little bit more in a conceptual way, and we had very set ideas of the kind of things we wanted to achieve. But when we arrived back in South Africa, almost everything went wrong, and all. I think one has dreams of institutional competence or institutional. Like structure and things that work beautifully, and of course everything became deconstructed. Almost everything that could go wrong went wrong, and we were really forced upon thinking about the kingdom of God. First of all, what is the kingdom of God in relation to ministries and Christian ideals and so on, and then also just kind of being in a space where God disempowered us to bring about the kind of vision that we were holding on to. And I'm sometimes a little bit of a skeptic when it comes to vision. I think God's promises are infinitely superior to any vision we might have. Yeah. And we kind of were just forced to hold on and just really, really hang in there. And in that setting, God in his providence and in his goodness and in his kindness and in a very slow, gentle way, brought people around us in ways that we didn't expect, and we kind of grew together and institution, but tremendous good has happened, and it's happened around this mutuality of having to do things together, of bringing a team together that I can't remunerate or pay or give any honor to, and whom I couldn't even dictate to and say, well, you do this and you do that. I think it was Andy Crouch who said that leadership is defined by the question, who is flourishing because you have power? And constantly we were reminded of this whole sense that God has given us power, but it's not the kind of power that we wanted or that we thought we needed in order to do it. And so we just set ourselves to work with these people whom God brought and try to empower them. And the people on the team all got to write their own, kind of job description it's such a wonderful thing to say to someone, if you could imagine the most incredible job that you could do as a Christian artist or a Christian mathematician, and you could exercise that in a Christian way, what would it look like? Tell me about it. Oh, that was such a wonderful process. And so, so after quite a few years, everybody who came on board in the leadership team, they're all still there. And it's been good, but it's been good because I think God disempowered us and then kind of re-empowered us by means of one another. Yeah.
Thank you, James. A few years ago, one of the things that we loved so much was the meals that we shared with the community and with the very people that we were learning with. Do you want to talk just a little bit about the role of shared meals, shared space?
Yeah.
How does that factor into what Crux is doing? And
yes, for sure. I mean, all the time. So we knew we had to do something different to really reach people and empower the laity in a way. And so this whole idea of actually running most of the things from our living room and for people to come for a meal and to sit down and to have a share in that hospitality, there's something incredible. If you read Luke 24 and I know it's not a mystical passage, but when Jesus sits down with Cleopas and probably his wife, and he breaks that bread and their eyes are open to see who he is, there is almost that kind of eye-opening revelatory moment when Christians gather together. It's hard to say why it is, because it's not as if we practice the Lord's Supper every time, but it really is, there's something in that moment of us sitting together around a table and doing that, So there's so much to say. So we do a lot of Libri style, I suppose, meetings where we have like lectures in our home, but we always have a meal, and we have a meal every term together, and it just really is I don't want to say euphoria, but the vibe, the vibe so sometimes when we have these meals, we rearrange all the furniture in the home and we put all the tables we have together, and everybody lines in and everybody has to climb over each other. But the buzz is so incredible. Yeah. And it's unlike every party. If you're a party goer, it's unlike any other party you've been to. There's such a buzz and such a kind of a lifting of the spirit, in our midst when we do that it stays with you for a few days. It really is remarkable, actually. So,
are there any barriers that you would say continue to come up in this journey of theological discipleship and
yeah. Look, I think we live in an incredibly complicated times, and when I look across this great sea of divide between the bottom part of Africa and Middle America, where you are right now, and I see what you guys are wrestling with, and we often have a little chuckle during a meal and saying, okay, well, now they have to begin to wrestle with the things that we've been wrestling with in this continent for centuries, and so of course our context is one that is full of inequality and disenfranchisement of people and so on. And so those are the barriers that you would expect in a context like ours. The strange thing is that and I kind of feel I need to pinch myself, but we haven't, and this country is so loaded, you know how tense things can become in this environment. And in South Africa, of course, we sit with all this history, yet we have not felt any of that tension in a space of 6 years. And I honestly, I can't tell you why that is. And maybe it is because we're an institution, and because there's no money involved, there's no power, we're outside the fences and the edifices of economy and power and the political debates, and it's not as if we don't dip into those issues and talk about them openly and freely. So the only thing that I can think at this stage is that there's nothing to be gained by any particular person in this community by acting in a way that would actually be hurtful or harmful to the other person. And so we've intentionally created a safe space where everyone can actually share their hurts or their opinions, which is also something that was not intentional, but kind of happened. And so there's this buzz that in the Krohn lounge, you're safe. You can, for example, when we do some of these talks, and they're really brilliant talks, they don't get printed, they don't get recorded, they just stay. It's just purely an interactive sort of dialogue experience, and it stays there. And so we have some people we have people in the room who really stand at opposite ends of some of the most polarizing debates you can imagine. And it's not been an issue so far. So far.
That's a beautiful example of kinship at work, where you can take the vast differences that reside in our stories and our perspectives and all of that, and bring that together for genuine relationship and dialogue. Are there any other practices, or is there a practice that has been key to your life together for experiencing this kind of kinship?
Alongside the idea of creating a safe space, so we sent out a little survey to people who attend our meetings and say to them, okay, what do you think is good? What do you think is what's really been good for you? And of course, L'Abri itself, the word was a shelter or a place, and that was very intentional on behalf of the Schaefers. But that's the one thing that came back, is said we feel that it is safe for us to be in your living room, expressing ideas, being together in community. Also, so I think alongside a safe space, where people are free to express and explore ideas, you do need this sense of somebody's got this in hand, like somebody's going to catch it if it falls. And I think the complementary nature of that really creates the kind of space where you can, the stronger, the firmer the hand to hold it, the further you can explore ideas. Yes. Right? Yeah. And then, I think to add to that, in particular, because we do work with all these artists and we have these artist gatherings, and this is purely organic. This came to us. We had no intention of gathering 150 artists, Christian artists from across the country into these things. It just happened purely because of the energy of the few artists who were so excited that here was a place where someone actually allowed them to have the conversation. But the people who have flourished most are those artists, and the reason they flourished is because they've been brought into a space where they were allowed to have a theological dialogue around the nature of their work. And
well, I continue to be inspired by the work that God is doing through all of you, and I'm super grateful, that we get to be connected as we somewhat blindly at times, but yet with the confidence that God gives us, continue to take each next step in those journeys. So thank you.
Can I just say something? I don't know if you're going to stick this in the recording or not, but I don't know what you're going to do with any of this, but things that go without saying need to be said, and you were our speaker at one of our very first, providentially God brought you across our way right here in the Western Cape at one of our very first artist gatherings, and what you gave us at that time was so inspiring that actually it really catapulted us ahead for a few years. I was so grateful to hear what you had to say and the way and what you presented. So we really are indebted to you in many ways. So we are mutually extremely grateful for this relationship that we have with you, for sure. Yeah, we're delighted about it.
It was a delight for us and for me to be there as well. So definitely consider you all our kin, and hopefully we can just continue to grow that relationship.
No, for sure.